actually they weren't terrible, they weren't evil, they didn't have it in for me. They were just coming from a different perspective. And what button did I trigger in them to make me react that way?
Of course, we all think we're right at some point. I think ego comes into it. I think ego gets involved.
They just get bigger as the person's notoriety and wealth gets bigger.
Did you see Ryan's eyes then? Ryan's eyes just went.
He rolled. That was like the wheel rolling in Ryan's eyes, and I could see that they landed on me.
Very good. Very good.
InspirationNation, hello, Lee Kemp here for another week on the podcast. Joe and Ryan with me as well. How are we doing, guys?
Great, thank you.
Excellent. Look at that. Ryan is multitasking, so nodded along for those that are listening and not watching. Thank you, everyone out there. Of course, we are on all podcast platforms. We are on YouTube. We are on Twitter at Listen to IN, Listen TOIN. And most importantly, we are live every week on TikTok, Noya-Inspiration. Currently about 6 o'clock on a Tuesday, give or take this time. Joe will signpost where we're on, etc., etc. We love you to join us live as well. So, all being said, I believe on the mythical wheel of conversation, which I know we love, but I'm not going to do it.
Did you see Ryan's eyes then? Ryan's eyes just went.
He rolled. That was like the wheel rolling in Ryan's eyes, and I could see that they landed on me.
Very good. Very good.
That was very good. Yeah, it was very good.
I can make it. I can get as much entertainment out of this. Wring it out like a sponge until it is. Just I'm running out. I'm running into my own analogy now. It's terrible. So,
okay.
Anywho, it's me this week for conversation. So my topic title this week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about. I want your initial thoughts on the subject, and then I'll give you a bit of a reasoning and my thoughts behind it. A few hellos there on TikTok. I can see. Joe, want to give any shout outs quickly?
Yeah, CFC. Hello there to you. Thank you for joining the podcast live. And thank you for Zero for joining. There's lots of people joining. It's fantastic. Yeah, so don't forget to like, don't forget to share the podcast live. Don't forget it's live. So if you say hi and ask questions, you will get your name on the podcast. And no negativity. We won't call that negativity. You want to be positive and get involved.
Unless you're funny, I will make subtle references to it if you're funny. So I appreciate that.
Get involved in the show by asking questions on the podcast. And Lee's just put his camera off. What are you doing?
That's not me. It's just died again. We've got technical difficulties.
What's going on? This is what happens, guys, on the podcast when Lee, guys, and on TikTok, when Lee has technical difficulties. I don't know what's going on. Thank you for the likes, CFC. Really appreciate the likes. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. And again, you're now on the podcast. You are now on the podcast. Your name is on the podcast. So you can go download it, inspirationnation.org.uk. I'm doing a bit of shilling whilst we're waiting for Lee.
It's all going wrong. It's all going wrong. I don't know what I've done.
And Ryan, whilst that O'Connor 666 asked for a favourite footy team. So, what's your favourite footy team?
Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah, Tottenham, just like me.
What
about you, Ryan?
North London is red.
Arsenal then, is it? I think Ryan's Arsenal. Oh dear.
Right, I'm going to power through with my technical difficulties whilst we I've got my terrible camera on. Doesn't look at that. That's my actual laptop camera.
Oh wow. It's like you're very bright. You might have turned your lamp off.
Yeah, it's coming into focus. Anyway, people listening don't care about these technical difficulties on the camera while I sort out my actual webcam. The topic of conversation for this week, we've been going for about half an hour before I got to this, is there is no such thing as the truth.
No such thing as the truth, right? Okay.
Joe, what are your opening thoughts on that statement?
Well, mine is that it's very depends on your perception, right?
Can I just butt in and say, strange monk, pineapple on pizza is an atrocity and should never happen. Carry on.
Can I just say?
Yes, it should.
Can I just say, Strange is a regular attender to the live. So thank you, Strange. And again, thanks for the question as well. Thank you for the question. You're now Strange. You're on the podcast. There you go. Regular positive person on our TikTok live. So thank you, Strange Monk, for that. There you go. You just got thoughts from Lee there. There you got Lee.
Right.
Go on.
I'm still getting through this. I'm actually, for those on YouTube, I don't think my actual webcam camera on my laptop looks much worse.
It's okay. You're good. You're good.
Yeah,
you go for it, Lee.
We're going to run with this.
Go for it.
So, No such thing as truth. And I've stolen this, so I'll give a shout out. I've mentioned to you guys, I listen to loads of podcasts. They're all about the nerdy subject of professional wrestling. Jeff Jarrett, who is an ex-wrestler, does a podcast called My World. If you are into wrestling or actually business or even just inspiration in terms of people who've done a lot and gone through hard times, seek it out, search it, My World with Jeff Jarrett. It's a fantastic podcast. It's a gateway to a whole community of podcasts I listen to on a network called Ad-Free Shows. I would say I probably listen to 6 or 7 different podcasts a week. I then subscribe on their Patreon, so probably 2 or 3 bits of bonus content, a few live watch-alongs. For people who like football, it's like getting to do a Zoom with managers or top players from the past. It's awesome stuff. There's my little shout out as I'm stealing the subject. It's very, very good value for money. And if you like it with adverts, the podcasts are there to listen to as well. Anyway, the statement that Jeff said in the podcast was, there's no such thing as a truth. And he actually referenced this as a point of reference. So the Bee Gees, Ryan, I don't know if you're familiar. Joe, obviously, it's right in your era. Barry Gibb, is he the one who's still left? That's a horrible way of putting it, but you know what I mean.
I'm not sure. I've got to be honest. I'm not sure.
I think it is. I asked it as a question. I Wikipedia'd it just now. I know that's true. But he was doing a documentary and he was being asked about it. And he said this is no such thing as a truth, because he said he could tell you what happened 20 years ago with a certain event or something. But if his brothers were still alive and you asked either of them, they would give a tweaked or even completely different version of the story from their perspective. And that's kind of the framing reference for there's no such thing as a truth. Because we've not only have we all got our perceptions and perspectives, we've all got our narrative of the situation as well in what happened to us in it. And actually, for me, this concept, and it solidified, I think, something in my head, is it's just a really good coping mechanism isn't the right word. But I suppose to put a bit more meat on the bone with it, we always have our run-ins, for example, you know, at work, or if you're in like a club or something like that, or in friendship groups, you all have your run-ins. And generally, whatever the run-in is, you are on the side of good, and whoever you've got the run-in with was on the side of bad. And that's how you will tell the story to people. That's how it sits in your head. We've all been through these things. All the greatest stories are it. Star Wars is good or bad. For example, white hats and black hats. Every film is there's good guys and there's bad guys. And the best bad guys are the ones that don't realize they're the bad guys. They have their true motivation for what they're doing. And I think that's true in real life as well. I don't think anyone is the bad guy when they tell the story. What's the phrase? Everyone's the hero of their own story. Sure. And I think there's truth to that. And it comes back to that. There's no such thing as a truth. So years and years and years and years and years ago, worked somewhere else, but had a run-in with someone who was new to the company, became my new manager. And for years and years and years, I would tell the story about how terrible they were, really bad person, they did this to me, etc., etc., etc. I'm pretty sure they weren't going around and telling everyone what an arsehole they were and how they just had it in for me. They would have had a completely different version of what happened, where in fact, there were obviously things about me that weren't working, weren't right, whatever else it was. And they, in their way, were trying to deal with them. I'd caveat and say it was probably very heavy-handed, but actually that's not to say I haven't done that same sort of thing myself in the past. So, you know, for years and years, I carried this baggage of what a terrible person this was. But from my point now, a lot of years later, with hindsight, you know, having been through a lot, matured and everything else, they weren't. We were just on different sides of the same truth. And my version of the truth that they were terrible is not the same as theirs, which again brings me back to there's no such thing as a truth. You've just got your different perspectives. And they had their motivation. Again, as I say, I've had times over the many, many years, using work as an example, where I've done things where I look back on it and think I'll have probably done that a different way if I had my time over again. Everyone will have those things. But again, someone will have been on the other side of those. I wish I'd done things again differently. So they might even now look back and think maybe they didn't do it the right way. Maybe they stick by it. All these different things in the air. But it brings me back to being a more calm and more centered person, that actually they weren't terrible. They weren't evil. They didn't have it in for me. They were just coming from a different perspective. And I think it makes the whole thing a lot easier to digest when you actually realize that they, you know, you're not the hero, they weren't the villain. It was just a set of circumstances that happened. And I think I take that forward now in terms of situations I'm in now. If someone does something that gets my back up or is a bad thing or whatever else it is, what I try and do, it's not always as pure as it, but what I try and do, especially when I'm reflecting on things, is try and look what was their motivation for doing that, or maybe what button did I trigger in them to make them react that way? What else have they got going on? What's their motivation? Just try and look at, I suppose, back to the framing for this, what is that person's version of the truth as opposed to mine? And I think that then helps temper my reactions or what I do or what I'm trying to look for the situation, which is where I say it kind of sits for me as a coping mechanism, if you like. I threw a lot of words out there, so I'm going to stop for a minute, take a breath, let you guys talk on it, and then we'll pick it up again.
Okay. Ryan, you got a view on that?
On the initial question, it appeals to my logical brain. Whilst, what was it word for word? There's no such thing as the truth.
No such thing as a truth. That is the quote.
But there is such a thing as a fact. So that's why it appeals to my logical brain. Water is made up of atoms that are hydrogen and 2 oxygen. I think, yeah, that is right. 1 hydrogen.
I saw your eyes roll back in your head.
I don't know. So I went back into my GCSE life. But you know what I mean. There's no such thing as the truth. No such thing as the truth, but there is such a thing as a fact. That's how I read that. In the same way that there's a famous line that the camera never lies, but the cameraman does. So the camera will always take a true photo, but you must have seen those meme photos where people like do this around the sun. But because of perspective, It looks like that's the same thing. The camera doesn't lie, but the cameraman does. So in the same way this works, no such thing as the truth, but there is such a thing as a fact. That's how I read that straight off. I think, as Lee's camera dies again, I think that
technical difficulties continue.
I think that for a lot of it, I agree with you. There is a 2 sides to every story type feeling to it. There is always an aggressor and a defensor. There is always, there is always, whilst I agree to an extent that it's just 2 sets of circumstances, somebody has to be right and somebody has to be wrong, or at least somebody has to be more right than the other one for that argument, in my opinion, to exist. Because you can't argue about the same opinion. If Joe said his favorite color is red, and I went, no, red is the best color. It's a bit silly. So, to me, I think there's always an aggressor and always a defensor, as my Siri goes off. But I think there is always somebody that's potentially more right than the other. But that doesn't mean that they're right to be in that argument. There's always a way to settle these conversations without a need for an argument or aggression or however they kind of look. And sometimes this is a good lesson that Lee himself taught me, is you have to let people find out the truth for themselves. You have to let people hang themselves, which is a bit of a harsh way to say it, but you have to let people kind of walk on their own sword. And that's a really important lesson. You don't always have to be, as a person, I don't always have to be the I told you so. I can kind of sit back. You're muted, by the way, Lee. I can sit back and kind of let that magic almost happen, which is something that you taught me really well.
Thank you on that, and for the mute as well. That's me hitting too many buttons trying to fix my camera. I suppose I'll throw in there with it, Ryan, and don't disagree with any of that. I suppose, and again, this is me how I said it in my head. Like you said, there's the aggressor, for example, but sometimes I might interpret someone as the aggressor, but they're responding to something I didn't even realise I did. Now, it happened, I did something that triggered them to do something back to me, but my version of that truth, without having reflected on the situation, might be, why are they coming at me?
Yeah.
That
Agreed.
sort of thing, without me and their version of the truth will be, well, why did they come at me? And you're clashing over that same sort of thing. Or, you know, I might have a way I want to do something, someone else might have a way they want to do it. We both think we're right. Arguably, both of us are and neither of us are at the same time. And again, but my version would be, well, why are they campaigning for their way? My way's what I should do. And it's very, and again, I talk from having done this for years, it's very easy to get into that cycle. And I suppose what I'm trying to do as much as possible is take a step back for that. Like you said, Ryan, it's almost get to the facts or the outcome or the truth. You know, if we're both trying to pull in the same direction, just me trying to be a bit more objective on what my opinions are sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I think there is, like you said, there's water is water. And similarly, and I use a real life example that happens here, is I like showers so hot that my skin burns off while I'm in the shower.
Yeah, same.
We've talked about this before. If I don't come out with a layer of skin less, I haven't done the job properly. Whereas someone else will get in and be like, oh my God, that's roasting. Why is that too hot? Whereas to me, I'd get in after them and say, why is it too cold? So the water is still water, but then our subjective opinion of what that means to us is where it becomes very different. So I think there are the facts, but it's you know, some things are, but a lot of things are opinions that we treat as facts in our mind as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I like this conversation piece. I feel like the fact that you're doing this, not everyone's out to get me, thought piece at the minute, which is probably a terrible way of describing it, but you know, where you know, people aren't being off with you because of you. It could be to do with them. I think this feeds a lot into that. And I think this kind of maybe disagree with me if you like, but it feels like it's fed from that.
Yeah, I think it's all in that same bit again back to core Joe principle about circles of control. And I can't to an extent, like you said, I can't control how people react, but I can control how I not only how I react to it, but how I interpret it. So I might have been the cause for something, but sometimes you don't know that until you get the reaction back. But again, you can manage that.
Yeah, like it, guys. So yeah, I've got a couple of things. I want to just give a little bit of I've got some questions coming through on the TikTok. So got a strange agreeing with you, I think, to a certain degree. He says the truth will set you free, but not until it's finished with you. So almost like that bit about Ryan, what he said about that bit where you got to let people fail almost. I think Ryan coined it as swallowing your own sword. So you know, there's a lot to be said for that. Perspectives, I think, is important as well. Of course, we all think we're right at some point. I think ego comes into it. I think ego gets involved.
100% right.
You know, if someone wants to win, your ego's, it's not you really fighting, it's your egos. Well, it is you, but it's your ego trying to be right. And it doesn't always work. And you're always trying to shout down the other person because your ego, you want to be right. And of course, we all get that feeling we want to be right. And that's when you've got to look at facts and what's happening and what's, you know, can we both win from this conversation? I think there's a lot to be done that as well. And again, talking about good or bad, I think Lee referenced it before. You know, I do believe people are generally good. So, you know, people we think that have treated us bad in the past, they're good. You know, they are generally good. It's just that situation, like Lee said. So there's a lot there in there. So there's a lot in there. But I want to sort of go back maybe on the TikTok a little bit. And I want to just put this question in there. And Lee, I hope you can do this with your lead camera. But there was a question from Strange again, who said, do you think that a lot of truth and secrets are hidden by people of higher classes and power? What do you think of that question? That's from Strange. What do you think?
I think secrets, and Lee's muted again, but whilst yes, I agree with that, but people at all levels of society and richness or poorness in terms of monetary value also all have secrets. You know, how many people hide affairs or drug addictions or doing other activities that maybe people shouldn't be doing or whatever. But I think it just appears on a grander scale because those people are more in the limelight, and because they are rich, they're seen to have not they're seen to be perfect. Like, remember the whole Macaulay Culkin kind of drug addiction phase and things like that when he was having problems a few years after Home Alone. You know, people see you as this perfect child, but they don't remember you grow up. Same with Daniel Radcliffe and Harry Potter as well. But I think those secrets exist at all levels of life, but they just get bigger as the person's notoriety and wealth gets bigger, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think as you do, like, as people, increase their wealth or whatever, it tends to exaggerate their personality traits. And I heard that before, and I think that's really true, So if you're quite generous, if you're a very generous person, then if you get more money, power, whatever, then you become more generous. But if you're not, if it's not that, then it heightens those. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. So I really like that perspective you got on there. That as we get, as we grow, and again, something we said here about, as we learn. There's another one. Is the truth always the same or always changing as we learn more? So as we learn more, do we then change our perspective depending on what we learn? I think you talked about facts, Ryan, didn't you? And I think that's got an important part to play as we learn. So we might have thought one thing was right before, but as we learn more about it, maybe someone's sort of said to us X or Y and pointed us in different direction. Oh, well, that's actually true. You find a different fact and actually change your view on what you thought the truth was before. You think, oh, that changed my total view of how I saw the world, and your lens starts to change. So I think there's a lot in that. So as we learn more and grow more, as we mature more, and I'm very passionate about, age does not equal wiseness. You can be young and wise, you can be old and wise, but you can be old and not wise and young and not wise. And I think there's a lot in that. So yeah, I think Lee's hit a good point here about truth is very subjective. There is fact, but it depends on, with every fact and statistics, I suppose people have always got a different view on it, don't they? And I suppose depending on where it comes from, do we believe that authority? Is it a fact? Is it not? There's a lot of, we have to do our own research now. Luckily, we've got, Google, but there's a lot of misinformation as well that people can believe, that think they're facts, but they're not necessarily facts. So yeah, I think some really good content here in terms of what we can learn from this. And, I think, I'm really enjoying this conversation, but I don't know where Lee is, but I think Lee's coming back. But I think it might be time for takeaways or something like that at this point.
Yeah, and I got all of that, guys. I disappeared off on the YouTube. Good to get you guys speak, but I was just fiddling around with my camera and I didn't want to be bashing as you're trying to talk on stuff. I think that's all very good. What was the question again? Sorry, just what was the wording again there, Joe, for the...
What question were you after?
Oh yeah, do you think that a lot of the truth and secrets are hidden by people of higher class?
Yeah.
No, it's good comment. And again, I think it's an interpretation thing, because especially when it comes to power, you're on one side of the fence or the other. And again, it's very easy, I think, to, not saying it doesn't happen, but it's easy to see or perceive deception when that might not always be the case. And I know, again, I've done exactly the same thing. So again, it's, I think, whatever the situation, work, personal, family, friends, clubs, society, is just taking that back step. Don't go straight to the negative thoughts on people. Presume that there is a genuine intent there. I'm not naive enough to think that 100% of the time it will be, but a lot of the time it is. And actually, if I think it is 100% of the time, again, I'm not there, but I'm trying to be there. It makes me feel better. You referenced before we started, guys, that you can see that I'm quite calm and chilled and stuff at the moment. And part of that is some of this routine stuff I've been putting in place that I talked about before. But I think some of it is down to this, trying to get this thinking in my head more and more and more as I do things. It's not easy. It's not perfect. It's not always there. But hopefully the more I talk about it, the more I bring up my crazy concepts once every 3 weeks, the more it helps embed it all in my head.
Great. I love it. No, that's it. And I love that perspective, actually. And I just want to give a shout out to Keelan who's joined. Keelan, hi. Welcome. Keelan joins a lot as well. So thanks, Keelan. Thank you again for joining the podcast. Hello. So people are joining that join the live, so it's great. Yeah. No, it's great. So Lee, do you need to do shilling? Do we take our takeaways? Where are we?
Indeed. Let's do some shilling. I already shilled again. Inspiration for this came from ad-free shows at ad-free shows on Twitter. If you are a wrestling fan like me, or you like hearing stories of people come over adversity, there is a lot of great stuff on there. Joe, I know I've recommended some to you that I am going to send you the links for one day. And of course, us, back to the true shilling, Inspiration Nation. Head over to inspirationnation.org.uk. Everything to do with the podcast. Sign up for Joe's newsletter. Full archive is on there. Coaching service. And of course, the merchandise store. Everything you buy goes into funding and supporting what we do, getting the message out there. People seeing you wearing the stuff out on the street, obviously will get an interest for them. It directly funds us as well. So we appreciate all the support from everyone out there. Twitter at listen to TOIN, and of course Joe is everywhere. If there's a social platform, he is on it. Just search Jose Noya Inspiration Nation on Google, in your Google machine, and you will find it. And of course, most importantly, J_Noya_Inspiration Nation on TikTok. We are live each and every week. It's been fantastic this week. I have to say, Joe, this has been building momentum each and every week. A load of people joining this week, interacting in the comments, asking us questions. You heard, we read them out. Some particularly funny usernames on there as well. I always appreciate that as a sidebar.
Mobo's in the house. Mobo is in the house.
So thank you, thanks, everyone, for supporting, joining in. It's been great. Joe will signpost Tuesdays or Wednesdays around about, sometime between 5 and 7. We'll be recording. We try and make it as structured as we can, but real life gets in the way. I'm running out of words now. Up.
It's all going on, Ellie. It's all going on.
I absolutely love it. I feel real energized from this, and a big part of this is the people on TikTok. So again, join us on there. Again, J_Noya_Inspiration Nation. Right, must be time for me to count us down now. We'll be back again next week.
No takeaways. We've got takeaway. We're going to do takeaway.
Quick, go.
Quick takeaways.
You've got 5 seconds. Takeaway, Joe.
My big takeaway is that the truth depends on your perspective. That's my takeaway.
Fantastic, but you were beep word at your 5 seconds there. Ryan, takeaway.
Facts mean more than the truth. No, I don't mean that's not true. No, you put me under pressure.
Did you just read that off the back of like a book?
Put the pressure on.
No, you put the pressure on me with the 5 seconds. My takeaway would be that Joe said about truth being perspective, but that doesn't mean that the truth is always easy to accept. So I think being ready to accept the truth when you are is important.
I like it. And I'm going to say, just my framing on this, obviously, there's no such thing as the truth. It's the reference point. The bit that really solidifies this in my head is everyone is the hero of their own story. And remember that. Remember that when you're looking at what people are doing, what's their motivation, what's behind it, helps you, again, strategize, whatever it is, moderate, think about your reaction back, because it's all about how calm you feel, how well you feel about things, what is weighing on your mind. And this is a great way to work with that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lee.
I've really enjoyed this week, guys. Obviously, I brought the conversation to the table, so of course I did. Thank you for your input. It's been really good. And again, all those out there on TikTok, thank you. Again, the truth is the light, but the mind is your soul. Fantastic. There on TikTok.
What are you waiting for?
You can't be on the TikTok, Ryan.
Oh,
you can't get logged into TikTok.
I'm really terrible with the usernames because my eyes are so squinty.
Yeah, but you got your glasses on.
That Keelan has put, is this guy the Robin and you're the Batman in the inspiration world? I love this. Me and Ryan are Joe's Robins. Well, actually, Joe is Batman. I'm Robin. Ryan is Batgirl.
I've got to see the face of Ryan. I wish I've got to get that.
The Alfred, if you want, it's fine. We can work for that.
Oh, you make me laugh.
Outrageous.
You can be like one of the lesser Robins that comes on later.
How am I not Commissioner Gordon?
I thought you might be Commissioner Gordon, or you might be, yeah. Anyway, there you go. Oh, look, Batgirl.
Let's wrap this up. Joe is Batman. I'm Nightwing, and Ryan's some replacement Robin.
We give him Commissioner.
Replacement Robin. That's outrageous.
TikTok, we thank you. Podcast listeners, we thank you. YouTube, we thank you. 3, 2, 1. Inspiration Nation. Catch you guys
later. So I want to know now, what's your biggest takeaway? Don't forget to hashtag it with Inspiration Nation in the comments below, and make sure you commit to action. Thank you for checking out. So you can catch all our other Inspiration Nation podcast episodes right over here. So go check them out. And also, don't forget to subscribe, because that will tell you when your next video goes live by you hitting that amazing bell. So until next time, it's Inspiration Nation, and I'll see you right over there.